Back in 2019, I reviewed the Dyson V11 and I found it to be the best cordless vacuum cleaner that money could buy. And since that date, I've very much struggled to find a replacement device that could truly compete both in terms of power and ergonomics. Well, till today. Here I'm reviewing the Pure Cordless vacuum cleaner. It's made by a British company and ironically it's made by ex-Dyson engineers. This is an upright vacuum cleaner as well as a cordless one. So something that kind of tries to one-up from its Dyson competitor. Now the Pure Cordless vacuum cleaner can be found for around £600 in the UK. It might vary depending on import charges if you live elsewhere. While the Dyson V11 starts from around £500 but goes up to £650 if you go for the V11 oversize, which I also have on review. Now there are timestamps down below, so if you want to skip to the appropriate section, although I would urge you to watch throughout the review because there's a lot of different aspects between the two vacuum cleaners that you might want to consider, and given I've got experience with both of them, give you kind of an informed buying decision. And furthermore, if you're on social media, I'd very much appreciate a follow on Instagram or on Twitter. It'll be on your screen right now or indeed in the description. And also down there you'll find a link to my website on all electric and hybrid vehicles. And ironically, Dyson is a company that tried to invest in the electric vehicle market but then ended up pulling out due to a variety of different reasons. So if you want to keep up with latest news and reviews, do check out Totally EV. Your support would be equally appreciated. So first off, I want to show you what you actually get in the box, and it's actually pretty simple because everything you can see over here is what you'd get in the box. Now you've got this long kind of wand which actually attaches to the top of the vacuum cleaner. I'll show you that in just a bit. You've got a crevice tool which also has a kind of soft brush at the end of it, so if you want to clean some more sensitive places, and then you've got one which can be useful for stairs, or let's say if you're cleaning the car. So this is quite a useful one there. And then you've also got an attachment tool which attaches to the wand, so it will attach over here and allows you to put these attachments essentially on the go, so you don't have to kind of store them away in a certain place. You've got a wall plug, and you've got, in my case it's in the UK, but US and EU ones I included as well. You've of course got the vacuum cleaner itself, and it does have a removable battery. Now the removable battery can be bought separately, at least at the time of making this video it's not available, but I've been told it'll be around £100 or so, or the fact that you can actually buy it with an additional battery as well, so there's essentially having two batteries. Now the big thing to note over here is the charging connector is on the battery device itself, so therefore you can take out the battery and charge it independently from the vacuum cleaner, whereas with most Dyson vacuum cleaners you have to have it kind of placed in, and they don't have actually removable batteries unless you go for like the V11 oversize, which is the first Dyson that I'm aware of that actually has a removable battery. So this is great for longevity, and also the fact that the design of it makes it quite convenient to charge, because I don't have a place to wall mount anything, so as a result it just actually makes it really convenient. Now speaking of which, this is a upright vacuum cleaner, so there's no kind of wall mount that you would have because it stands on its own, and we'll talk about some of these features in just a bit. Now the included brush head and a roller head does have a soft foam, or so say it's not soft foam, but a soft roller head at the front, and then you've got the brush head as well, with some bristles as well at the top and the bottom of it, and some rollers underneath. Again, we'll talk about manoeuvrability in just a bit, and the way this clips in is pretty simple to say the least. As it's an upright vacuum cleaner, you can also take it around on the go, or you can plug it in and it essentially clicks in and then clicks over here, allowing you to essentially have the vacuum cleaner in a singular unit. Now for you to effectively transform the vacuum cleaner from a kind of portable device to a traditional one, it's pretty simple. You just click in the top wand and essentially you've got a full-size vacuum cleaner. I've just left the battery out so I play around with it without it switching on. Now the reason why you might want to use it in both modes is simply because, other than having it in traditional vacuum cleaner kind of layout, if you're going to take it to the car for example, or you're doing some stairs, or for example you are doing, I don't know, the top of your curtains, then you can do so by taking this unit out and taking it on the go. So therefore you're not limited in terms of use case. Now this does have its pros and cons, and we'll just list them now because it just kind of makes it will kind of give you an idea of how to use it. Now These have little feet which sit underneath, and it does sit stably. Now you can see potentially from my ground I've actually got quite soft carpet. I'd say it's medium, not quite long pile carpet. And as a result, when you are using this, it will actually fall over. I didn't find it to actually be stable. Even on a hard surface, so such as on my kitchen tile surface, I still found it to be a little bit wobbly. Specifically, I'm taking around this hose and going around to harder to reach places. Whereas with the Dyson equivalent, you have the unit kind of in your hand, and while it is heavy while in your hand, you still have it in your hand and you don't have to worry about kind of like a wobbly unit. Think in, like, not say the older times, but not too long ago when you had the corded vacuum cleaners, which you would have kind of trailing behind you apart from the cable that was connected. You'd have it trailing and kind of wobbling about while you were doing your vacuum. This is very much the same kind of case, apart from the fact that there's no cable and this is kind of a portable unit. So it's kind of a pro and a con in the same place. While it does take away the ability of, you know, having a lighted thing on your hand, because essentially this is your one device and you can just go around, you know, cleaning around wherever you'd want to go. It does also mean that this unit itself isn't actually that stable, and it's one of its biggest negatives in my opinion, specifically when it comes to using it on kind of a daily basis. Now, as you saw right there, I did connect it because the one device kind of doubles up. So at where the head unit is, or where you would actually use it, it opens up and allows you to click it into place and has an extender reach, and therefore allows you to plug in the crevice tool and clean from afar. You can, of course, plug in the crevice tool straight to the hose itself, and the way this is designed is actually really well. So I just love the fact that they've thought of different scenarios and kind of different length, whereas with the Dyson you're kind of limited by the size of the unit itself and how you're cleaning it. Now, to use the cordless vacuum cleaner, you have got a set of 4 buttons. And yes, that means when you press the button, as in the on and off button, it just operates. You don't have to have your hand constantly on a switch or enable a latch or something like that, like you'd find on some of its competitors. Now, the operation is very simple. When it turns on, it defaults into its medium power mode. I've been told by Lupe that actually trying to address this and actually change it to its lowest power mode by default, not only to conserve battery life, but because they believe the performance of the lowest power mode is really good. And we'll touch upon this in the performance and my tests. But essentially, you've got 3 power modes to choose from. High, it's plus, and then minus with the light would illuminate, and in the middle neither of these lights will illuminate, so therefore you know you're in your power mode if the audio cue isn't obvious already. Then you've also got the roller button. So yes, you can enable or disable the roller, which is great because it's not an option you'd often see on a cordless vacuum cleaner. In fact, there's very few that I can think of on top of my head that actually allow you to have this option. You would find it in more traditional devices, such as actually the Lightball Multi-Floor by Dyson, where you can enable or disable the roller via like a red switch, but that's not the case with the modern Dyson V11s, and it's nice to see that Lupe have kind of integrated that. Now, in terms of bin capacity, you've actually got 1 litre to use, and there's a button over here which basically takes it out. Now, while that was very seamless, and I made it look very seamless in terms of taking it out, when it comes to actually operating it, you'll actually probably never be at a kind of horizontal use case of it. You'll be kind of vertically, because you'll be standing up and pressing this. As such, what you'll find is that getting the bin, you really have to be taking it out in a singular direction. If you were to try and pull it out this way, it won't come out properly. So hopefully I'm kind of making that clear. What I'm trying to say over here is that it needs a very linear motion to get the bin out. Now, the bin capacity is 1 litre, which is great, and it's definitely an upgrade over like the Dyson V11, which is around 0.7 litres. However, the design of the bin itself, in terms of removing the dust that you have, I feel is not as intuitive. Namely because when it comes to the Dyson, you have got this kind of scraping tool that when you take it out, it kind of scrapes out the dust at the same time. This is not quite the case, so you're probably going to have to get your hands dirty a little bit more with the Lupe Pure Cordless, purely because, well, you have just a latch which opens up, and then you can open up the filter compartment as well. and also clean in this respect. But again, it means that you're probably going to have to get your hands dirty, and it's just, again, not as intuitive as the Dyson equivalent, at least not in my opinion. Now, very much in that same sort of respect, I feel that the battery design, while it's great to have it removed, is also a little bit, well, it has to be done in a certain way. You have to kind of place the bottom bit and then place it in, and sometimes this is not as intuitive, such as if you want to just place it straight, you can't do so. So potentially that's something that they might look to improve or change in terms of design. But again, when it comes to using it, you have to use it in a certain way, or kind of put it in a certain angle. As you can see over here, I've kind of overshot it, and the battery kind of needs kind of like a whack to go in, which might not be very convenient. Now, the battery does have 4 LED indicators, which indicates 25% charge and the amount of battery life it's got, and very much when it's charging, it's the same sort of respect, and will switch off in terms of LED lights when it's fully charged. Now, moving on from there, we've actually got the design of the unit itself. I personally have no issues with it whatsoever, although I did ask my mother and I asked my fiance, and they both didn't like the design of the Loop in comparison to the Dyson equivalent. They felt that it just didn't look that nice. Let me know in the comments below what you make of the design. I think it's kind of like a Scandinavian type of look, and one that actually kind of reminds me of kind of like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, or potentially even a portal gun, which I never thought of, but someone pointed out on Twitter, so shout out to you. Now, before rounding off this section, I do have to talk about maneuverability, and here is something that I found myself a little bit conflicted in, because looking at the reviews of the Pure Cordless, a lot of people said that it was a lot easier on the wrist, and it meant it's a lot easier to maneuver. Whereas for me, my mother and my fiance, we all said the opposite. We actually found the Dyson a lot easier to maneuver. So why is this? Well, because the Dyson has weight, and you know the weight is going to be there. So it's definitely not going to compete with, like, say, a stick corded vacuum cleaner, which is very lightweight. But it does mean that Dyson's weight is by your wrist, and you're very much aware of that weight around your wrists. And by the brush head, it's completely lightweight and allows you very easy maneuverability, and allows you to kind of swerve in and out of places. Whereas with the Pure Cordless vacuum cleaner, the weight is towards the brush head. So therefore, while it might seem that you've got kind of an easier way, less strain on your wrist, shall we say, when you do start using it and start maneuvering it, you will find a bit of strain on your wrist that's being applied, because the weight is not where your wrist is, it's where the ground is, and that is where there's more resistance. So in our experience, as in when I say our, as in my mother who's in her 60s, my fiance and me who are under 30 years old, we all found that the Pure Cordless was less convenient to use in terms of wrist strain and in terms of actually maneuverability. So of course your mileage may vary, so do let me know in the comments below what you make of it, if you use them, or what your thoughts are on the whole of that. My mother actually said, you know what, nothing's going to beat the stick corded vacuum cleaners in terms of maneuverability, because they're super lightweight, and I've got to say I do agree with her. Now, before moving on, I do want to give a quick shout out to PSY Truth Seeker, someone who commented randomly on my YouTube video where I was comparing corded, cordless and robot vacuum cleaners. A shout out to you, because if it wasn't for that person, I would have no idea of the Lupe Pure Cordless. Now, with the brownie points out of the way, let's get on to the sound tests. Now, headphone users, do be aware that I'm not going to be adjusting the volume, so it might be a little bit loud for you guys. So in case you need to dial it down, now is your chance. And what I'll be doing is comparing the Dyson V11 Oversize in comparison to the Pure Cordless. And what I'll be doing is cycling between the low, medium and high power modes between each devices. So do check out in the annotation down below, so it gives you an indication at which power mode it is actually operating on. Now, hopefully my microphone was able to pick that up properly, and you were able to give you an idea of how the two compare. But essentially, via my own ears in real life, the Pure Cordless is much more higher pitched, and therefore is a lot more noticeable when you're actually cleaning the house or the flat or whatever it might be that you're actually cleaning. As a result, if you're going to be cleaning later in the evening or early in the morning, for example, the Dyson is a lot quieter, specifically in its eco power mode. Speaking about its different modes, this will of course affect the battery life. And here I did a battery rundown test on a piece of carpet, so therefore it was very much a level playing field between the two vacuum cleaners. Now in the low power setting, the Loop gets 49 minutes whilst the Dyson gets 67 minutes. In medium it gets 30 minutes, that is the Loop, whereas the Dyson V11 oversized gets 28 minutes, and in its max or boost performance mode the Dyson gets 14 minutes while the Loop gets 13 minutes. Now both will take around 3.5 hours to 4 hours to charge to full. My battery rundown test resulted in the Loop going from 0 to 100% charge in 3 hours and 37 minutes to be exactly precise. Now speaking of the different power modes, this of course does have an effect on terms of the overall performance. Now I did a variety of different tests, and I must say the Lupe Pure Cordless was actually really impressive. Now what I first did is I put it on hard flooring, and I put 50 grams of oats, and then I did 50 grams of flour, and then I did 50 grams of a mix of both, purely because that's happened after a while of testing. Now with the oats, with the roller enabled, I found that the Pure Cordless does a fantastic job in both the low, medium and high settings, where it does pretty much do a flawless job in terms of cleaning all of the oats off the ground, and also through the small little crevice that you might be able to notice in the video, or at least from the tests. By comparison, the Dyson plows the oats forward, so any sort of larger device, and while it does get most of it, it does still plow a little bit of it forwards. And furthermore, at lower power, in terms of specifically for the Dyson, what you'll find is that when it comes to having the oats, it essentially doesn't do a great job in terms of getting the ones in the small little crevices. So here, no matter the power setting that you use, the Lupe Pure Cordless comes out on top, and it was actually really impressive. Now the differences came even more kind of apparent between the two when it came to using it with flour, because when you had the roller enabled on the Loop, it essentially does a flawless job, no matter the power mode that you use. Whilst the Dyson does a decent job, but again still fails to get some of the parts off its crevices, even if you're using it in its boost mode. So smaller particles just seem to not really pick up in terms of the brush head. So whatever Loop have done over here should really be commended, and something that was extremely impressive to say the least on hard flooring. Now it's worth bearing in mind that if you were to disable the roller, which is what you would probably associate with hard flooring, I actually didn't find to have a good performance. Actually with oats, with the roller disabled, oats would actually kind of spew out of the vacuum cleaner after you switched it off. So I actually used with the roller enabled at all times. You might have different experiences from me depending on terms of what you're cleaning, but what I'm trying to say over here is that leave the roller enabled in order to maximize the amount of debris that you're picking up. Now on the flip side, what the Dyson V11 range actually does phenomenally well is edge cleaning, and this is where the Loop kind of falls short. It is not in terms of monumentally fall short, but the Dyson really did come out on top in sort of every single test I did, from smaller particles to larger particles, and quite a lot of kind of debris that's built up on the edge. So here, not only in terms of straight line performance, but also from the side, the Loop just doesn't do as well as the Dyson equivalent. And the tests were not only present in terms of hard flooring, but also when I tested on carpet, the differences again were not stark and like night and day, but there were differences there. And specifically with the Dyson on kind of like the auto or the boost mode, it would definitely outperform the Loop in these tests. Speaking of carpet, another set of tests that I did, and yes, I did a lot of tests to say the least. Here on carpet, the differences were actually not as different between the Loop and the Dyson. Here both vacuum cleaners did an actual fantastic job. It was very hard to get smaller parts of oats on terms of a single run, or a dual run, if that makes sense, without you doing multiple passes, for example, because those small little oat particles really do go into the carpet. And in my case, I've got kind of medium pile carpet to long pile carpet, and in this respect both vacuum cleaners really struggle, despite being one of the most powerful vacuum cleaners there is around, be it corded or cordless. So in this respect, what I'm trying to say is that in carpet performance, you actually struggle to see the differences between the two because both do a really good job. Now, ultimately, what I'm trying to say over here between the performances of the two devices is that when it comes to edge cleaning, the Dyson comes out on top, but pretty much everywhere else, the Lupe either matches it or betters it. And that's not only because of the design, but also the power that the Lupe is able to achieve. Now, I don't have a suction meter to test the suction of the Lupe versus the Dyson, so I can't give you some accurate sort of figures in terms of that, but from my experience and from the multitude of different tests in a variety of different scenarios that I did, the Lupe essentially comes out on top. So essentially this is probably the best performing cordless vacuum cleaner that I've ever tested, and potentially that there ever is, because the Dyson V11 was and still is a benchmark and a reference for a lot of people out there. Now, I should also mention in terms of the brush heads that the Lupe Pure Cordless seem to have attracted more of Laura's longer hair. So my fiance has longer hair, and it was trapped a little bit more, and it seemed to be trapped a little bit more on terms of Lupe Pure Cordless versus the equivalent Dyson V11 torque head. That said, it's very easy to open up both devices, and in terms of untangling it and actually getting the hairs out of the bristles, it was actually easier on the Lupe Pure Cordless. So your mileage may vary, but it's just something I thought to point out. Specifically, if you have like long cat or dog hair, for example, or human hair in this respect, you might find it a little bit more occurrent and being a little bit more present on the Pure Cordless versus you'll find it on the Dyson V11. Now, elsewhere in terms of the overall width that you get in terms of coverage area, it's pretty much on par with the Dyson V11 torque head, and will be equivalent with some of the other cordless vacuum cleaners out there on the market. And of course, in this respect, it's not going to compete with the likes of the Dyson V11 Oversize, which, as the name might suggest, has a much larger coverage area. Now, this all really leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the Lupe Pure Cordless? Well, like any product in the world, it's not perfect, and I think that there's a few improvements that could be made going forwards. So for example, edge cleaning could have been improved. In terms of portability, I feel that there's still quite a lot of weight that's associated with the cordless vacuum cleaner. So for those people who have weak wrists, or those people who are more elderly and want to get into a cordless vacuum cleaner, this is not going to really be the solution. Of course, you might disagree with me, but in my opinion and from my tests and my experience, and even asking my mother to try it out while she isn't elderly, she's only in her 60s, she did find it also a little bit heavier and harder to maneuver with her wrist. As for the actual design of it, it's very subjective in terms of the look. Some people will like it, some people will dislike it, but there's no denying the fact that the actual bin compartment itself, in terms of the design of it, isn't as intuitive as the Dyson's, where it comes to like scraping out the dust and the debris that are found in it, so therefore you're going to have to get your hands dirty a little bit more. Other than that, however, the Pure Cordless is actually a phenomenal device. Not only does it outperform the Dyson V11 in a multitude of different ways in terms of testing, both on hard flooring and on carpet, it also has a removable battery, which is a major plus point for a lot of people out there in terms of longevity. It's also very easy to use. You just press a button and then you just go ahead and clean. You don't have to hold the trigger down, for example, or have a latch that you have to enable or disable each time. And it's just simplistic in that domain that it essentially does a phenomenal job in cleaning and allows you to sort of different versatile options for you wanting to, let's say, stairs clean, car clean, house clean, all in one singular device without having to worry too much about faffing around with different tools or different kind of devices and putting potentially too much strain on your wrist when you're using it in that domain. So as a result, I can't really see why I would not recommend the Pure Cordless, but it's just worth bearing in mind that it does have a few flaws. Now, as a result, I have to give this product my Best Buy award because it's really competing with a reference vacuum cleaner, which is a Dyson V11, and in some cases actually beating it. So it's very hard for me not to recommend this product and for you not to check it out, because I definitely think that Pure have done a fantastic job, specifically thinking this might be one of their first devices. I might be wrong, but I think it's their first device that I actually produced, and as a result you can just imagine what the future might hold for this company, specifically when it's competing pound for pound against the Dyson V11, which is no small feat for any company to do in the world, let alone a small startup company from England. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you to make your own informed purchasing decision. As with any video review on my channel, it's not endorsed or sponsored. It's completely honest and unbiased, and also in terms of looking at in terms of a consumer's point of view, and hopefully that came across in this video. Of course, if you like that type of content, give it a like, subscribe to see more from the channel. It's very much appreciated. And of course, favorite and share if you feel this video might be helpful to a family and friend making an informed purchasing decision, specifically if they're looking at the Dyson V11 or one of its competitors. So I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.